Welcome to Difficult Conversation Africa broadcast, a pioneering platform which attempts to raise, discuss issues many are afraid to face. I present to you the host, Yinka Olaito, a media communications development expert, author with about 2 decades experience in Africa and in the United States.
All right, good afternoon, viewers. My name is Inka Olaito, your host at Difficult Conversation African Podcast, a platform where we discuss issues many are afraid to raise, particularly issues that affect developments at the national, personal, and continental level. As we know, there are conversations cut across development across Africa. In this episode, we'll be looking at the ongoing conversation around South African land reform and the diplomatic roles that are attending to it. So let me give you a background of what this look like. Land reform, which is called expropriation law, has always caused tension in South Africa, and it is presently causing diplomatic tension between South Africa and United States of America, led by President Donald Trump. A glaring fact is that to date is that there has not been confiscation or forceful takeover. Presently, President Donald Trump had threatened to withdraw its aid in South Africa, which South Africa government has responded by saying the impact of such aid withdrawal will be minimal to those who are HIV and tuberculosis patients whose drugs are being subsidized by federal fund. Beyond that, it has also been claimed that the aid is just 17%, and the worst far-reaching impact that it can has, even if it is cut off, is that some staff of the sector may lose their job, which South African government has considered minimal. The land reform question aimed at addressing racial ownership disparity and it's also about private unused land. The land reform are focused on 3 areas, which include restitution, redistribution, and more. Today, I'll be speaking with an expert, somebody who is well knowledgeable in the area, a public analyst, a journalist, Mr. Matata Sebo. And let me give you a brief about him so that you understand this. Matata Sebo is a recipient of National Order of Ikamanga in Sifa, bestowed by President of South Africa in April 2019. Is a former member of SABC board, which is South African Broadcasting Corporation board, chairing the subcommittee on news and editorial policy. He was adjunct professor at Department of Journalism at Wits University, also past executive director of the National Editor Forum, SANEF, of South Africa. Sedo is a founding chair of African Editor Forum, which he led for 3 terms until 2020. He continued to be honorary member of the executive, advising and acting. After serving as editor at the City Press, he was head of the Media 24 Journalism Academy, responsible for training working learner journalists. He was also director of Press Freedom Commission and many more. Presently, Matata Sedo is retired. He's also the advisory council of the respected think tank Mopangwe Institute for Strategic Study. Sedo has since 2000 been permanently based in the family farm outside Makado, where he farms with cattle and goats and across or many other. He lives in the farm, and I'm happy to welcome you. Welcome, Mr. Matata Sedo.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us virtually this afternoon, and we appreciate your patience and all that. My first question straight, you already know the background of what we're trying to say. What do you think, why do you think land reform in South Africa has always been messy, despite the fact that it does not include forceful seizure?
Well, when we talk about land in this country, we have to go back to the time of colonization and the dispossession of black people from their land.
Okay.
This goes way back in 1652. So by 1994, when this new dispensation came with becoming the president, the belief was that as part of the reparations that must happen, land will all be given back to those who were forcibly removed from it. But that did not
Okay.
happen because at those negotiations between the ANC and the white government of the time, it was agreed that uh, there would be a cutoff point, like 1913. Any claim that goes beyond 1913 would not be entertained. But by 1913, the entire country had already been taken over. So if you can't go and claim your land that was taken from you in 1670, then this whole process was not going to work. So,
Really?
what you have in this country at the moment is that you have a white population that is less than 10% of the population, but it controls about 90% of the economy and over 80% of the land.
If
Now,
I hear you very well, sir, you said 90% of the land, the 10% are controlling it, right?
yeah, less than 10% control and own more than
Imagine.
85% of the land.
Really?
Yes. So this Land Act that is being spoken about, uh, it's an attempt to say what are the constitutionally guaranteeable ways in which land can be given to black people.
Okay.
But yeah, but these unlike in Nigeria or even Kenya or other countries that were colonized on our continent, where the white settlers left when the independence flag was raised. Here you have a resident settler community that is controlling the economy of the country. And they don't want anything to be done to touch their control of that economy. And this is the reason why they have now run to Uncle Sam in Washington to say we are being killed, our land is being taken forcibly without any compensation, which
You are
is
frozen.
all lies. But what I'm saying is that any attempt that is made to try and tinker with this equation where white people have everything and black people have nothing uh, is met with screams of racism. President Thabo Mbeki, more than 20 years ago, described this country as a country of two nations, one white
Hmm.
and rich, and one black and poor.
And poor.
That scenario hasn't changed.
But if you look at the other party, they can also say that they are part of they've been there for long, and therefore the unity and the bonding should have been better.
No, when the change came in 1994, the agreement that was reached in what was called CODESA, the Conference for a Democratic South Africa, CODESA, the agreement that was reached between the ANC and the National Party of FW de Klerk was that the economic system was going to remain as it was. Uh, Even white bureaucrats who were in had their jobs secured in terms of something that was called. So the new government was not just going to walk in and say, I'm bringing my director general to come and work here. You had to work with the white director general that you found in that department if you were a new minister that was coming in. So the genesis of the problem that we have today, even around land, It's the concessions that were made by the ANC at those negotiations in 1993.
All right. So the trouble start with the concession made by ANC. Is that what you are saying? But majority of the ANC leaders are black.
Yes, the ANC leaders are indeed black, and they came back from the bulk of the leadership of the ANC came back from exile and went into these negotiations. These negotiations had started whilst Mandela was in jail. He negotiated what we call the mainframe of the agreement was done between Mandela as a prisoner and the white establishment. And then everybody was brought in and they could change this and that. But the key things like land, the jobs for the white, the economy, those were no touch. The new government was not going to tinker with those things.
So so it's an age-long thing that hoped to have been resolved prior to now. That's what you're saying. Such areas like land and economy should have been touched at the deliberation.
Yeah, if I understand your question well, the despite the fact that you have a black government, the language that is used in this country is that the ANC is in office but not in power.
That's the right word, and maybe that is it. They're in the office but not in power. So who has dominated the
political? If you have the political power without the economic muscle, you ain't in power.
Yeah, that's true, because those who control the economy will eventually control the power.
Yes.
So I'm getting this other side that you are trying to push, this narrative that you are pushing forward for the first time. But if we look at that, if you look at that, some movements like African Forum and the Solidarity Trade Union, who represent about 600,000 Afrikaners families and 2 million individuals, are called on expulsion of some terms as well as express commitment to South Africa. That means that they still want to stay.
Yeah, it's also important to understand who AfriForum and Solidarity are. They come from a trade union
Okay.
that was called Mijnwerkersunie, the Mine Workers Union, which was a purely white organization led by an arch racist called I'll tell you his name just now, Ari Paulus. Ari Paulus believed and said it publicly that black people were baboons. So these are the parties that are founded on the foundation of that political setup. Yeah.
Okay. So it is actually difficult to get.
Yeah, it is not surprising that they exist in order to make sure that the status quo ante has to be restored or maintained. Nothing that changes the power structure will ever find favor with AfriForum and Solidarity. Never. Nothing. And that is why they went to the US during the time of Donald Trump in his first term and negotiated to be recognized there as a civil rights movement. And they were. And now they used that connection with all the KKK movements in the US to lobby the American government to take steps against South Africa. And this thing that was done by Donald Trump now about closing not just US aid, because that doesn't just affect South Africa, but specifically saying South Africa will no longer get anything out of the US because we are supposed to be killing whites, taking their land willy-nilly, and as far as I'm concerned, the main reason, the fact that South Africa took Israel to the Hague at the International Court of Justice for genocide against the Palestinians. That is, when you want to understand what is happening with Trump and South Africa, you have to pass through Gaza. Then you'll understand.
That's an aspect that you are still raising, that passing through Gaza is also a conversation that has not been had. But the what is in my mind is this. With the movement of AfriForum and other movement, is it possible that the diplomatic conflict resolution and negotiation, can a resolution be found where the entire black South Africans will not be the people who suffer from this this kind of argument that is coming up?
It's important to also point out that not all whites belong to AfriForum, and not even all whites who speak Afrikaans and who call themselves Afrikaners are members of AfriForum or support AfriForum. There are progressive white people who are not part of this whole thing. So when we speak about the need to find each other, and you restrict that debate to AfriForum, the answer has to be no. It is not possible for that to happen, because they are really just racists who don't want black people. They now even have a taxi company that they have formed that only hires white drivers and only takes African-speaking passengers.
Wow!
So, but where do you start a debate about togetherness with people like that?
So, but the question is, are there internal ways Africans, the black and the Afrikaners, the white descent, in South Africa, are there ways where we can bridge peace accord in a fragile nation like South Africa?
Well, this group, the AfriForum that we are now concentrating so much about, they are a fringe group, but very loud. And as I'm saying, it is not going to be possible. They just want their apartheid days to be back here, and they should be in charge. They don't want to mix with black people. Government schools that are in areas that are predominantly Afrikaner, even if there are black people who live there, they don't want them to be admitted to those schools. So the reality is that you're talking about a fringe racist group. It's almost like saying in the US, for example, that how can you make peace with the KKK?
All right. I think one of the things that I've seen with the uproars around this conversation of land reform is the fact that the fear around present Expropriation Act is related to the fact that such can wreck economy like what happened in Zimbabwe. Are you seeing such possibility, and how can the media help in the right information dissemination?
Okay, Zimbabwe, it's used as a bogeyman when you start talking about land reform and land restitution in this country. You are pointed to Zimbabwe and say you want what happened in Zimbabwe to happen here. Now, what happened in Zimbabwe? During the Lancaster discussions in London, the United Kingdom government pledged to buy land from white farmers to give to black Zimbabweans so that the land ownership ratio should be reduced from being predominantly white to either predominantly black. But as the time went on, after 20 years, the UK government hadn't brought in any money to buy that land. So people rose up, and Hitler Hunzwi, who was a military veteran from the independence struggle, led the struggle to take back the land. And that was chaotic. Here in South Africa, the process that is in the act that people are yelling about says that everything has to go to the High Court. An evaluator must evaluate a farm or a piece of land and say how much this is worth, and people will be compensated. In instances where the land is being needed for either a public service or a public good, the possibility to annex that land without compensation exists. And that is a standard operation, even in Nigeria today, I'm sure, when the government wants to do a road somewhere, which is a public road that is going to carry people, they'll come and say, we want to do a road here. This was your land that you were plowing cassava, but now they want that a piece of that, and they will get it because it is for a public good. But all of that will be subject to stringent constitutional reviews in independent high courts of this land. There is not a single white person whose land has been taken away without being paid. A lot of money has been paid to white people for land that they sold themselves. So this
one that you have mentioned,
the narrative that
is different.
Land is being taken away because of this act or shall be taken away because of this act, it's false. And even white farmers themselves have said that is not true, and they have rejected even the offer to migrate to the US, because if you are a white person in this country, in South Africa today, you're really well off. You live a better life than you can ever live anywhere. Some of them left many years ago and went to Australia. They've come back.
We will get to that aspect. But I think that the media need to do more, like you have explained now, that there's this a different narrative from the fear that maybe the white people had. That it's not going to be the narrative is not the same with what happened in Zimbabwe. So maybe the media need to do more in education. But I think that, like you said, the white people have an understanding, and that is why majority of them have rejected the offer to be given refugee status in the US. But let's continue. As a long-standing experienced professional, how can your generation intervene and ensure peaceful coexistence of the entire citizenry?
Well, my brother, peaceful coexistence between poverty and opulence, it's impossible.
Really?
Bob Marley said, a hungry man is an angry man. So if anyone, including myself as a professional, wants to see peaceful coexistence of all races in South Africa, we must organize for political and economic justice. That is the only thing that can bring you everlasting, real peace. Not some rugby game where the team wins and we all jump up and down in the street. That is for one day. When the jumping up and down in the street ends, the white people go back to their suburbs, the black people go back to their tin houses, and poverty continues. There can never be peaceful coexistence between the poor and the rich.
So for you, a political situation is more appropriate. What I'm also thinking is there a possibility that constitutional amendment can play in resolving these changes? You have suggested a political approach, but I'm asking, will a constitutional amendment play? What role will constitutional amendment play in resolving the challenges? For instance, Section 25 of the South African Constitution deal with property issues, and there has been a long debate about whether it allow the state to take land without money being paid for it. We were also aware of the parliamentary committee has been looking at changes in the constitution to allow expropriation in the public interest, which the executive order now take over. So are you saying that a constitutional amendment will not be a better option than to look at political settlement?
The present act that was signed into law by the president recently, it's part of constitutional mechanisms to make sure that there is land restitution and land reform and a process that is orderly, that makes sure that black people also become owners of the land that was stolen from them in the first place. So the constitutional setup, it's already in place. What you're dealing with are people who they cannot argue that they can't go to court. They can. They don't want to go to court because they lose in court. And what they want is for the status quo that they are in now to continue ad infinitum. And that cannot be a recipe for peace.
Oh, okay. So you are thinking that constitutional reform won't do anything?
With a very you're dealing with a very loud group. The media in South Africa, the most influential parts of the South African media, it's still white controlled. So when these guys make noise, it's accentuated 10 times, and it reaches Nigeria, it reaches Washington, it reaches London, and it sounds like there is this big movement against progress in South Africa. But that is not really true.
So, like you are saying, economic power of these few and their ability to control and influence the media is also playing a part in this. That the issue is not as the magnitude of the issue is not as huge as the media and the world is hearing from it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying that the media is still very much one that accentuates white concerns
over the black people
as against black issues. If Johannesburg as a city does not have water in Soweto, that will not be a story leading all the bulletins in stations around the country. But if there is no water in the suburb of Houghton in Johannesburg, that story will run until the mayor makes that there is water in Houghton.
So, in closing, Mr. Matata,
you can take something as big. Yeah.
In closing, what, aside from political settlement, what would be the short-term, medium-term, and long-term solution to the issue of land reform in South Africa?
Is the implementation of the law. In the short term, they must implement the law and make sure that the processes are in place to redistribute land to the landless. As I said before, it cannot be that black people under a black government 30 years down the line are still crammed in shacks whilst white people live in leafy suburbs. That's a recipe for a revolution that will be coming soon. Long term, that's
I
where.
just pray that there's no revolution. I'm not sure that it will be good for anybody. Or do you think that will that?
It depends what you have to lose in a revolution. If you have stuff that you lose in the process, the revolution is a very bad thing. But if, as a result of the revolution, things change and you are living better than before, the revolution was good.
All right, Mr. Matata Sedo, thank you for this insightful conversation. I'm happy to hear some of the other side of the narrative that maybe the world is not hearing. Maybe because, like you said, the media is still majorly being controlled by a section of the population, and that make it look like they have the larger voice. But at the same time, I'm an African person. I'm a Pan-African person who wishes that there's peace in every nation and every country around the continent. I wish that all the parties will look at the issues, ensure that there's justice, ensure that South Africa become a home to everybody, whether you are Africaneer or Afri Forum member or you are a black African person, because we need to live in unity. Unity is a foundation that guarantees development. And I want to thank people like you who continue to raise your voice to some of the fundamental issues and are bringing clarity to some of the conversation. Thank you, Mr. Matata Shisaido, once again. I appreciate your time, and thank you, our listener, for this opportunity. See you in the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. For inquiry, please send an email to info@difficultconversationafrica.org. Telephone 0809 591. Please follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Difficult Conversation Africa. See you soon.